Hey, good evening. Welcome to our Bible study tonight. We are continuing our series on things that make you go, what? And tonight, as you can see, we are looking at the plot to kill a dead man. Things that are a little strange. This may not be quite as strange as some of the other things.
It's pretty strange.
It's pretty strange, but a plot to kill a dead man. And the dead man that we're talking about is Lazarus. We're in John chapter 11, and specifically, this account is going to be John chapter 12, verses 9 through 11, is the plot to kill the dead man. But Chad's going to give us some background history on Lazarus as we get started.
So there are few people that seem to keep coming up over and over and over in the life and the ministry of Jesus, and Lazarus is one of those guys. Probably because of the family that he belongs to. You've got Mary and Martha who show up a few times, some in a positive light, some in a negative light, and then you got Lazarus who shows up most notably in the chapter before John 12, which is John 11, if you're keeping score at home. In John 11, Lazarus is sick. And so Mary and Martha know Jesus and know his powers and everything like that. And it's, that's not a story that's as strange as a plot to kill a dead man we're going to talk about. But John 11 is a pretty strange story too, because Lazarus is sick. We know that Jesus, absolutely could have healed him from wherever he was. There are times when he achieved distance healings, and this is not one of those. So he lets Lazarus wait around until he dies, and then waits a little bit longer until he actually goes to the Bethany where Lazarus is. And when he gets there in John 11, his sisters are not happy with him. Right? Martha, I think, is the one who rushes out and says, "Hey, if you'd have come earlier, our brother would not be dead." And Jesus says, "Look, this is all going to work out in the end." It's a pretty strange story from the get-go. And then it gets even weirder as Jesus gets to the grave and he says, "Roll the stone away." And they're like, "Hold on a second. I'm not sure we should roll that stone away. You've been a funeral director, right?" So you would know the reason for that.
Don't do that.
You don't want to do that. They say, and I love the King James here, "Behold, he stinketh." He's stinking, which means he's in a continual state of stinking. But it doesn't matter to Jesus, right? He says, "Roll the stone away." And then he yells into the tomb, "Lazarus, come forth." The story just keeps getting stranger, and Lazarus comes out in all his burial clothes. Why don't you take it away from there? Right?
So Lazarus is he is now alive and well, and then we get to, I think it says 6 days before Passover. So Jesus is really near the end of his life in John chapter 12, and he's at a meal. And as you can imagine, the the Lazarus that has been raised from the dead, I'm going to fight the urge to say the stinky one at this point now. Thank you. Lazarus is raised from the dead. There's probably not a greater testimony to the power of Jesus than the ability to raise somebody from the dead. And they're at a meal, and now, guess what? People are wanting to come see Lazarus, the one that Jesus has raised. And so you have Jesus, who the chief priest already hate. And then you have Lazarus, who is really kind of his walking trophy that says, "This is the power I have over death." And so you see the chief priest in chapter 12, verse 9. I'll just read 9 through 11. A large crowd of Jews found out that Jesus was there and came not only because of him, but also to see Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. So the chief priests made plans to kill Lazarus as well. For on account of him, many of the Jews were going over to Jesus and believing in him. So, one of my thoughts is, if you're Lazarus, I don't know if he knows the chief priests want to kill him, but if he does, could you imagine just being brought back to life?
Yeah.
And then, why do you want to kill me? Like, I got to go through this again?
Yeah.
But it is a reminder that Lazarus's resurrection is temporary. He is able to die again, and he will die again. But it's a foreshadowing, maybe, in this instance, of what's going to happen just a few days later, where Jesus is going to die, and he's going to come back to life, and he's going to live forever. So there's a threat to the Jews, to the chief priest, but there's also this foreshadowing that takes place of what Jesus is going to go through. Jesus is enemy number one. Lazarus is a close second.
Yeah.
I think in this passage here. You got anything?
It's Lazarus is if you want to try to give a defense of who Jesus is and what he's saying and see if it's true, you can just look at the guy who was dead for 4 days and now he's walking around among you. And so the chief priests and all those guys, they had a lot of good reasons to want to get rid of Lazarus. I'm not sure what they thought they were going to achieve. Like if they do kill Lazarus, I mean, do they think that Jesus is going to let him stay dead this time, or or say, "Look, my power is greater than yours"? I don't know that there's a way that ends well for them.
I think they were willing to try it. I think it also kind of playing off of that. It speaks to the culture that Jesus is. He's entering his ministry into. These chief priests are, if I'm not mistaken, they're like the leaders of the body of Jews. They are supposed to be the example. They're supposed to be the leaders. They're it. The people are following them, and their primary method of how they deal with things that are a threat to them is assassination.
Yeah,
that should be a problem, right?
Right.
So I think that we see the not so strange part is how they handle threats against their culture, how they handle threats against really their reign. I think they see this as their reign. I got one more thing that I was going to say, and then I'm going to turn it back over to you. This may not be as strange as a she-bear mauling or a foxtail Molotov cocktail that we saw with Samson. But this definitely is I think it shows, if I'm going to have a big takeaway, I guess, it shows what a new life can do.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Lazarus has a new life. I don't know what stories you tell after coming back from the grave. I don't know what Lazarus's experience is. I don't even know if we know what happens to Lazarus. I don't know. I don't know what happens to him after this. He may end up being killed. He may end up being a preacher who's later martyred or goes on to live an old life. I don't know. But his new life that Jesus gives him, it causes problems for those who are threatened by Jesus. I think we've got to look at ourselves and we've got to say, okay, I'm supposed to have this new life. I'm supposed to be a new person. I'm supposed to have died to myself and been raised in his likeness to walk anew. In my doing that, what is the threat to the enemy? Mm-hmm. Am I a threat? Yeah. Does my new life make a difference in the world around me? Yeah. I'm not suggesting that we try to be like Lazarus and have people flock to us because of the new life that we've got. I don't think Lazarus wanted that at all. But I do think that we've got to decide, what is it that's happening because of me? Yeah. Maybe that's an application.
That's good. All right. Well, I had another one, but that one was so good. I'm just going to play off of that for a second. This is, in a small scale, this is what I think should be happening with all of us, right? Because Christians, we've all been brought from death to life. That's the terminology that Paul uses. We're buried with him in baptism, dying to ourselves, dying to sin, selfishness. We're raised up to walk in newness of life. And the overarching theme of Scripture is that new life ought to look a little bit different, or a lot bit different than the old life did. All right. If I'm being baptized into Christ and I'm becoming a Christian and saying I'm going to leave in the past, selfishness and envy and jealousy, and I come out of here and I'm just as selfish and jealous and envious as I ever was, then nothing's really changed. Lazarus, it's pretty clear that his state had changed. He went from being dead to alive. Whenever we come through the waters of baptism, we go from death to life, and that new life ought to look something different. All right, that's the call of Jesus, is to go out and be the salt and the light, and that should shine into the darkness, and that should stop the decay of what's happening in the world. And if we're not doing that, of course, people aren't going to take notice, right? But a life that is lived salt and light, in fact, I'm thinking that instruction in the Sermon on the Mount comes right after Jesus says, "Blessed are you when you're persecuted," kind of like Lazarus. Yeah. Because if you do this right, then the world is going to, kind of have some friction with you, and they should. Right? That's kind of the call of Christianity, is to be countercultural. And so the culture is definitely going to have some issues with how Christians live if we're doing it right. But Jesus says that's the call. All right. It may upset some folks. It may win some friends. It may lose some friends. But our job is to go from death to life and let our lives reflect the change that has happened.
Yeah, I think darkness hates light, but light is the only way to drive out darkness. And so that's our call.
That's it.
Live like Lazarus.
You want to send
Be
it
a
off?
threat.
Yeah.
Let's send it off.
Yeah.
Glad that you've joined us. We hope that you've enjoyed these studies of things that make you go, what? And we will see you hopefully Sunday.
See you.